Exactly 14 hours ago, an event occurred in the deep freeze of our solar system that completely shattered our foundational understanding of astrophysics, as the light completely vanished from the surface of an object spanning 33 billion tons. NASA's James Webb Space Telescope logged this cosmic anomaly, calculating a mere 0.001% probability of it being a natural occurrence. What we're talking about is an instantaneous, total collapse of surface reflectivity on an interstellar traveler known as 3I/Atlas. Picture a massive cosmic body racing toward our inner solar system, brilliantly reflecting the light of our sun, tracked for months by observatories worldwide that monitored its glowing coma and distinct optical signature. Then, at precisely 4:12 UTC, its visual spectrum plummeted to an albedo of absolute zero, failing to fade or slowly dim as it rotated, but rather switching off entirely like a total solar eclipse, manifesting in deep space without a massive celestial body to block the light. When you examine the data, the underlying physics becomes incredibly intriguing because celestial objects do not simply absorb 100% of incoming photons without emitting extreme thermal radiation, yet the thermal footprint of this object remained entirely stable. Right now, the greatest minds at the European Space Agency and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory are staring at their screens in absolute disbelief, looking at a literal void where an ultra-bright comet should be. This is not a minor anomaly, as the precision required for an object of this immense mass to instantaneously alter its optical properties across its entire surface completely defies conventional thermodynamics. We are dealing with an anomaly that occurred within a strict, razor-thin observational window of just 0.8 seconds, a timeline that rules out a natural comet experiencing a standard outgassing collapse or a massive structural fragmentation, which would invariably show a scattered, highly chaotic decay in ambient light. Instead, this event was perfectly uniform and absolutely sudden, mimicking what would happen if you pointed a high-powered flashlight at a massive mirror, and midway through your observation, that mirror decided to swallow the light completely, reflecting absolutely nothing back to your eyes while remaining at the exact same temperature. From a quantum and relativistic perspective, this implies a surface composition that dynamically rearranged itself on a molecular level, carrying profound implications that leave us with two distinct realities. If this is a naturally occurring phenomenon, we have just discovered an entirely new state of cosmic matter that can dynamically manipulate its albedo under direct stellar radiation. But if it is not natural, the conversation we are about to have will rewrite every single textbook. The world's most advanced telescopes remain locked onto its precise coordinates as the dark mass continues moving, actively accelerating, and remaining entirely invisible to optical sensors. The numbers are definitive, the clock is ticking, and what strikes me most about this anomaly is not just the sudden darkness, but the absolute, calculated control required to achieve it. To fully understand the magnitude of what we are witnessing, we must first establish exactly what 3I/Atlas is and how it arrived in our cosmic backyard. Discovered on August 14th, 2025, it was officially classified as our third confirmed interstellar visitor, following in the historic footsteps of Oumuamua and Borisov. But from the very beginning, 3I/Atlas was fundamentally different from anything we had ever observed, with a velocity vector indicating an origin point originating from the deep Perseus arm of our galaxy and a mass-to-volume ratio that was nothing short of staggering. We are talking about an object with a density matching solid osmium hurtling through the vacuum of space at 87 kilometers per second, possessing a highly reflective surface, bright enough to be tracked easily by commercial telescopes until the anomalies began. The first sign that the fundamental physics of this object were breaking down occurred exactly 72 hours before the total blackout on March 24th, 2026, at 11:15 UTC, when the initial dimming sequence started. NASA's James Webb Space Telescope, using its highly sensitive near-infrared camera instrument, detected a sudden, inexplicable 12% drop in the object's surface reflectivity, sending shockwaves through the astronomical community. Because the scientific method demands rigorous corroboration rather than relying on a single data point, multiple international assets were immediately deployed to cross-examine the phenomenon. While the James Webb Space Telescope detected the initial albedo drop, the European Space Agency's Gaia spacecraft independently verified the exact same luminosity decrease using completely different optical arrays, and the Atacama Large Millimeter Array down in Chile cross-referenced the emission spectra to yield the exact same result. Having three independent sources utilizing entirely different methodologies arrive at an identical conclusion means you can completely rule out instrument error across three of the most sophisticated observation platforms in human history. The numbers simply do not lie, and as the scientific community scrambled for answers, they quickly realized that this initial drop was merely anomaly number one. What followed was a highly structured, almost rhythmic degradation of light that defied every known model of natural space debris. First, the albedo dropped from a highly reflective 0.82 down to 0.60, and then precisely 24 hours later at 11:15 UTC on March 25th, it plummeted again to 0.40. By March 26th, the third anomaly struck, and the reflectivity hit an astonishing 0.15, with each drop occurring immediately and taking exactly 0.8 seconds to complete. Each subsequent step down was more impossible than the last, presenting a behavioral pattern that looked less like a natural cosmic event and more like someone operating a manual control system. Think of it like a dimmer switch in your dining room, where a natural comet losing material or breaking apart under solar radiation behaves like a damaged bulb slowly flickering, sputtering, and gradually burning out over a span of weeks or months. But 3i/Atlas was not flickering or showing signs of decay. Someone or something was pulling the dimmer switch down in exact, mathematically precise increments that should not be possible under any known laws of nature. In over 4 million years of simulated cometary observation models, humanity has never seen an object step down its visual signature with such mechanical precision, and this stepwise dimming was just the prelude to a much larger event. By this point, the global scientific community was already on high alert, with telescopes stretching from the peaks of Hawaii to the Canary Islands locking their lenses onto its precise coordinates. Over 12,000 cataloged near-Earth and interstellar objects exist in our primary databases, and 99.8% of them behave exactly as our thermodynamic models predict, making 3i/Atlas the ultimate mathematical outlier. At T-minus 12 hours to the total blackout, Hubble's Wide Field Camera 3 recorded a bizarre surface uniformity that shocked researchers, as the coma, the cloud of dust and gas that normally surrounds a comet, completely dissipated. It did not blow away in the solar wind as one would expect, but simply ceased to exist, retracting or vanishing within a razor-thin margin of 0.03 degrees. Let that reality sink in for a moment, because while a comet without a coma is essentially just a rock is still bound by physics to reflect light. At T-minus 6 hours, the rotation rate of 3i/Atlas, previously measured at a standard 9-hour cycle, stabilized to a perfectly locked orientation facing the Sun, aligning itself within 0.01 degrees of the solar apex. Then came March 27, 2026, at exactly 4:12 UTC, when the final drop occurred and triggered emergency protocols across multiple international space agencies. The albedo did not just drop another anticipated 20%, but collapsed from 0.15 to an absolute mathematical zero, meaning every single photon of visible light hitting the 33 billion ton mass was entirely absorbed. The surface went completely, entirely, and terrifyingly dark, vanishing against the backdrop of deep space like a hole punched directly into the fabric of reality. Everyone assumes that a dark object in space is simply covered in carbon or tholin compounds, much like the dark side of certain moons, relying on the conventional explanation that surface ice sublimates to leave a dark crust behind. But this model is completely incomplete for this scenario, because a natural crust takes centuries to form and does not manifest across a massive object in a mere 0.8 seconds. When you look at this from a strict astrophysical perspective, to achieve a 0% reflectivity in the visual spectrum instantly, the molecular structure of the surface must undergo a radical phase change, effectively becoming a perfect metamaterial engineered to swallow light. And that is just the beginning of the mystery, because while the visible light vanished completely, the energy entering the object had to go somewhere, as the first law of thermodynamics absolutely demands it. If 33 billion tons of matter absorbs 100% of incoming solar radiation, it must radiate immense heat, causing its thermal signature to spike exponentially and glow fiercely in the infrared spectrum like a newly forged piece of iron pulled from a blazing furnace. Yet, on March 27, 2026, at exactly 4:54 UTC, which was precisely 42 minutes after the visual spectrum collapsed to absolute zero, the successor to the Spitzer Space Telescope, the NEO-Surveyor, detected something that completely rewrote the rules. Instead of the violent temperature spike predicted by every foundational law of physics, the thermal emissions actually dropped, and the surface temperature plummeted from a standard 210 Kelvin down to an astonishing 4 Kelvin. That is just 4 degrees above absolute zero, occurring in the inner solar system under direct, intense solar bombardment where an object should be burning to the touch. To quantify the sheer impossibility of this, the probability of a natural comet achieving a perfect 0% albedo in 0.8 seconds is roughly 1 in a million, and the probability of its thermal emissions simultaneously dropping to near absolute zero under direct solar radiation is equally microscopic. Having both of these anomalies occur in the exact same object at the exact same time, while maintaining a perfectly locked rotation axis facing the Sun, yields a combined probability so infinitesimally small that it practically ceases to exist. This defies every thermodynamic model we possess, yet this impossible combination of zero visual light and zero thermal emission was explicitly confirmed 3 times, with NASA confirming the data at 5:10 UTC. Because the first law of thermodynamics dictates that energy cannot be destroyed but only transformed, we are left facing the reality that this massive amount of solar energy is actively going somewhere inside the object. Even Dr. Avi Loeb at Harvard University, who has spent years analyzing interstellar anomalies, publicly stated that a thermal drop of this magnitude requires an active internal endothermic sink, which is an artificial cooling mechanism. When a scientist at that level publicly questions the natural origin of a celestial body, we need to pay very close attention, especially when the Jet Propulsion Laboratory responds by initiating an emergency classification protocol on the raw telemetry data. Within hours of the discovery, the standard public data feeds from the Deep Space Network Antenna DSS-43 were temporarily rerouted. And while NASA's official position cited an unprecedented thermodynamic anomaly requiring extended calibration, calibration does not fix the fundamental laws of physics. 3 independent observatories confirmed the exact same 4 Kelvin reading, with the Gaia spacecraft verifying the thermal void and the Atacama Large Millimeter Array cross-referencing the microwave background. From an astrophysical perspective, the physics breaks down completely, presenting a scenario where if you could zoom out to a cosmic scale, you would see a 33 billion ton void cutting right through the intense radiation field of our Sun. It is acting precisely like a thermodynamic black hole, swallowing light and heat while letting absolutely nothing escape, an achievement that requires a mechanism capable of capturing, converting, or storing terawatts of thermal energy per second. This turns the object from a standard comet into a thermodynamic impossibility, raising the fascinating question of why a supposedly dead rock would suddenly need to absorb and internalize massive amounts of stellar energy. While some assume it is just anomalous surface chemistry, the data suggests otherwise, because if you are absorbing that much energy without melting, you are actively powering something. When you examine the data from a quantum mechanical standpoint, a surface that absorbs all wavelengths without emitting blackbody radiation matches the characteristics of a perfect metamaterial, which humanity can only manufacture on a microscopic scale in isolated laboratory conditions to cloak objects or cool quantum computers. Scaling that up to an object with a surface area of several hundred square kilometers sitting 240 million kilometers away is something nature does not do, as natural processes produce chaotic, asymmetrical, and imperfect structures rather than highly organized, mathematically precise behavior. The real mystery deepens because after 3 hours of total thermal silence and maximum solar absorption, the massive antenna array at the Green Bank Observatory detected that 3I/Atlas was preparing to unleash that stored energy. On March 27, 2026, at exactly 7:33 UTC, the object emitted a coherent, narrow-beam electromagnetic pulse directed precisely at Earth, repeating the exact binary structure of humanity's 1974 Arecibo message, but with distinct, deliberate mathematical modifications in the atomic number section. If this were a bizarre, naturally occurring plasma discharge echoing our own terrestrial radio leakage, it would violate everything we know about signal degradation, and if it is a highly complex metamaterial reacting to our radar pings, it represents a paradigm shift in autonomous astrobiological chemistry. But the reality that keeps astrophysicists awake at night is that if this object intentionally harvested solar radiation specifically to modify and return a 50-year-old message, then we are no longer observing a comet, but are instead being directly addressed. Within exactly 2 hours of this transmission, NASA and the European Space Agency took the unprecedented step of initiating a Level 1 global observational blackout, moving all Deep Space Network data to classified servers for the first time in modern scientific history. The Deep Space Tracking Monitors at the Goldstone Complex and the Madrid Deep Space Communications Complex have both recorded an architectural shift in the signal's foundational framework, indicating that the data is not a static loop, but a dynamic, real-time calculation. As you watch this, every major radio telescope on Earth is collecting data behind closed doors, and in exactly 48 hours, 3I/Atlas will cross the orbital path of Venus, providing the most critical telemetry yet, as it continues to actively accelerate and broadcast its modified binary signal across the vacuum of space. We are witnessing a definitive turning point in human history, an event that has completely locked down the planetary research pipeline. The transition from public interest to a security emergency happens so quickly that most academic departments are still struggling to process the structural silence. When you think about what it means to take raw telemetry data and scrub it from public servers within a 2-hour window, you realize the panic is not about a rock in the dark. It is about what that rock represents. For 5 decades, the Arecibo message was seen as a bottle thrown into a cosmic ocean, a symbolic gesture that many assumed would drift into nothingness, degrading into background noise long before anyone could ever intercept it. Yet, the precision of the transmission returned by 3I/Atlas proves that the signal did not degrade, or rather, it was received by something capable of reconstructing it perfectly. The modifications made to the atomic numbers section are the real smoking gun, as they explicitly rearrange the chemical foundational blocks we sent out, substituting our biology with something entirely foreign. Astrophysicists are quietly pointing out that the energy required to project a tightly focused, narrow beam pulse across hundreds of millions of kilometers back to Earth matches exactly the amount of solar radiation the object absorbed during its 42-minute thermodynamic blackout. It did not create energy. It repurposed our own sun's power to formulate a direct response. This completely demolishes the idea of a passive, cold piece of interstellar debris. It behaves with intent. It acts like a machine operating on logic gates that we are only beginning to decipher. The silence from leading institutions is telling, as press offices that usually scramble to celebrate major discoveries have gone completely dark, leaving independent observers to piece together the telemetry before the final servers are locked. The numbers coming out of the automated deep space arrays indicate that the acceleration curve of the mass is increasing exponentially, defying the gravity well of the inner solar system and suggesting an active, non-ballistic trajectory. We are no longer mapping a path based on Newtonian physics. We are tracking an object that is choosing where it goes. This self-directed pathing introduces an entirely new variable into our orbital collision models, forcing researchers to consider that its final destination may not be a simple exit trajectory out of our solar system. The absolute lack of internal friction or heat dissipation during this rapid acceleration phase hints at a propulsion mechanism that bypasses conventional thermal dynamics entirely, using a localized gravitational distortion or a field effect that leaves our current instruments completely blind to its power source. Every single tracking station that remains semi-autonomous has flagged the trajectory as highly anomalous, drawing a direct line between its current acceleration spike and its impending approach to the inner planets. This self-directed pathing introduces an entirely new variable into our orbital collision models, forcing researchers to consider that its final destination may not be a simple exit trajectory out of our solar system. The absolute lack of internal friction or heat dissipation during this rapid acceleration phase hints at a propulsion mechanism that bypasses conventional thermodynamics entirely, using a localized gravitational distortion or a field effect that leaves our current instruments completely blind to its power source. Every single tracking station that remains semi-autonomous has flagged the trajectory as highly anomalous, drawing a direct line between its current acceleration spike and its impending approach to the inner planets. This brings us face to face with the final, most terrifying question that the official briefings refuse to publicize. How does a supposedly dead cosmic body dynamically rearrange its atomic structure to encode artificial information in real time? The answer to this single question changes absolutely everything about our collective future. If this is a previously unknown, hyperreactive cosmic metamaterial interacting with our radar frequencies through complex plasma harmonics, then our entire understanding of natural physics requires an immediate, total rewrite from scratch. If it is an autonomous piece of ancient stellar technology executing a pre-programmed response to our presence, then we have definitively proven that humanity is not alone in the universe. And if this massive object is actively utilizing our own solar energy to rewrite our terrestrial broadcasts and direct them back at us, then the paradigm shift is absolute, shattering, and completely irreversible. There is no middle ground left to hide behind, as one of these scenarios is our immediate reality, and the clock is running out right now. As 3I/Atlas nears the orbital plane of Venus, the data streams are reaching a fever pitch, and the world's hidden sensors are capturing a historic event that can no longer be hidden by classified servers. The incoming telemetry indicates that the transmission isn't just a repeating loop anymore. It is actively adjusting its syntax based on the atmospheric reflections it receives from Earth. This level of real-time adaptability strongly implies an active computational system monitoring our planet's response network. National security agencies and global astronomical coalitions are quietly shifting their posture from scientific observation to active contact protocols, realizing that the window for simple academic curiosity closed the moment the object began speaking back. The planetary defense networks are working overtime to map out every conceivable trajectory for the next 48 hours, as a mass of 33 billion tons traveling at interstellar speeds possesses enough kinetic energy to reshape planetary environments. Yet, the lack of a traditional gravitational wake suggests a highly controlled manipulation of local spacetime, further solidifying the theory that we are dealing with an engineered craft of immense power. The scientific community is standing on the precipice of a new era, one where our place in the cosmos is violently recontextualized by an invisible visitor that commands the very light and heat of our star. Whatever this massive object is trying to communicate to us from the absolute dark, Earth is finally listening, and we are running out of time to understand the message before it reaches our doorstep. If you want to keep tracking this unprecedented anomaly and receive the latest updates on what the world's space agencies are hiding behind closed doors, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss a breaking report, and leave your thoughts on what this modified message truly means in the comments below.